So this is coronavirus quarantine poetry hour, where I'm reading a book of the Earl of Rochester, selected poems from the Oxford World's Classics. And the Earl of Rochester lived in the 17th century, back in the 1600s, during a time that was a little bit like today. And he used a lot of words that we find offensive to this day. And when I tell people that I've been raped by God and I've been fucked over by people in my life, while I've been going to the University of Oregon to study poetry, I've been getting fucked. And now I look at the world being on lockdown and quarantine, and I'm like, well, fuck. So I'm sure some of you are staying home and fucking, or copulating, or making love, or however you want to word it. You're having fun with each other, I hope, and you're being nice to each other. So I have a poem here under the satires and epistles that the Earl of Rochester wrote. One is just called Song. I'm going to change a few words. I hope you don't get offended. But I've been offended. So this is from a viewpoint of a mother who has been wronged, and I'm angry and I'd like to set things right. But it seems like no matter what I do, it seems to continually hurt my children and the people they love, and I don't have the right to be angry. So I have to be sweet and submissive and docile all the time. Quoth the Duchess of Cleveland to Councillor Knight, I fain have a prick, knew I how to come by it. I desire you'll be secret and give your advice. Though cunt be not coy, reputation is nice. To some cellar in Sodom your grace must retire, where porters with black pots sit around a coal fire. There open your case, and your grace cannot fail of a dozen of pricks for a dozen of ale. It's so, quoth the Duchess. Aye, by God, quoth the whore. Then give me the key that unlocks the back door, for I'd rather be fucked by my ex and my children than thus be abused by Donald and Clinton. I'm sorry, that's not what it says. I'd rather be fucked by Porters and Carmen than thus be abused by Churchill and German. So you just switch out names and update it. Now, that sounded harsh, and I love my children. I really do. They're just kids. They're just kids. And I would never do anything to violate them, especially that way. And I'm assuming that my ex never would either. His stepdad violated his own daughter, my sister-in-law. That was sad. And I've been called lots of names as a divorced mother. I've been called, a cougar, a slut, a whore, a fallen woman, a Jezebel. I've been called everything. Just, you get divorced and suddenly you're knocked off the pedestal. So, here's another one he wrote. Gosh, this is a little bit longer, but it's bad. So this is not for kids. This poetry is not for kids. It's called The Imperfect Enjoyment. Naked she lay clasped in my longing arms, I filled with love and she all over charms, both equally inspired with eager fire, melting through kindness, flaming in desire. With arms, legs, lips close, clinging to embrace, she clips me to her breast and sucks me to her face. Her nimble tongue, love's lesser lightning played, within my mouth and to my thoughts conveyed swift orders that I should prepare to throw the all-dissolving thunderbolt below. My fluttering soul sprung with the pointed kiss, hangs hovering o'er her balmy brinks of bliss. But whilst her busy hand would guide that part which should convey my soul up to her heart, in liquid raptures I dissolve all o'er, melt into sperm and spend at every pore. A touch from any part of her had done't, her hand, her foot, her very looks a cunt. Smiling she chides in a kind murmuring noise, and from her body wipes the clammy joys. When with 1,000 kisses wandering o'er my panting bosom, is there then no more? She cries all this to love and raptures due? Must we not pay a debt to pleasure too? But I, the most forlorn lost man alive, to show my wished obedience vainly strive. I sigh, alas, and kiss, but cannot swive. Eager desires confound the first intent. Succeeding shame does more success prevent, and rage at last confirms me impotent. Even her fair hand, which might bid heat return to frozen age and make cold hermits burn, applied to my dead cinder warms no more than fire to ashes could past flames restore. Trembling, confused, despairing, limber, dry, a wishing, weak, unmoving lump I lie. This dart of love, whose piercing point oft tried, with virgin blood 10,000 maids has died, which nature still directed with such art, that it through every cunt reached every heart. Stiffly resolved 'twould carelessly invade woman nor man, nor aught its fury stayed. Where'er it pressed a cunt it found or made, now languid lies in this unhappy hour, shrunk up and sapless, like a withered flower. Thou treacherous base deserter of my flame, false to my passion, fatal to my fame, through what mistaken magic dost thou prove, so true to lewdness, so untrue to love? What oyster, cinder, beggar, common whore, didst thou e'er fail in all thy life before? When vice, disease, and scandal led the way, with what officious haste dost thou obey? Like a rude, roaring Hector in the streets, who scuffles, cuffs, and justles all he meets. But if his king or country claim his aid, the rake-hell villain shrinks and hides his head. Even so thy brutal valor is displayed, breaks every stew, does each small whore invade. But when great love the onset does command, base recreant, to thy prince thou durst not stand. Worst part of me, and henceforth hated most, through all the town a common fucking post, on whom each whore relieves her tingling cunt, as hogs on gates do rub themselves and grunt. Mayst thou so ravenous to ravenous shankers be a prey, or in consuming weepings waste away. May strangery and stone thy days attend, mayst thou ne'er piss who didst refuse to spend, when all my joys did on false thee depend. And may 10,000 abler pricks agree to do the wronged Corinna right for me, for thee. Anyways, I kind of messed up on the poetry reading, but so this man who wrote back in the 1600s used a lot of cuss words, but his poems were actually quite well written. And he wrote satires and epistles, which were often mistaken. He's an artist, and he was almost killed for his satires. He has a satire against reason and mankind, and a satire against his ruler, his king or president or whoever. He observed people and then put them in his poems, and probably would have been sued in this day and age, because some of the stuff that he wrote wasn't necessarily all that flattering. He's got one of marriage. He has one upon nothing, to the postboy, from an essay. I mean, My Lord All Pride. So I'll be reading these off and on because, like I said, this is one of my favorite poets, is the Earl of Rochester. I call it Rochester. And he lived during a time period much like we live in now, with a king, much like Trump is. And from my opinion. And Johnny Depp played him in The Libertine. So Johnny Depp's one of my favorite actors, and he was really good looking until his face fell off when he caught an STD. Same with the Earl of Rochester, who is also known as Johnny Wilmot. So Johnny Depp got to play Johnny Wilmot. And they're both fools. I don't know what Johnny Depp's birth date is, but the Earl of Rochester's birth date is April 1st. So happy April in the coronavirus quarantine.